Welcome in. It is Big Ten today. It is great to have you with us on this Thursday. Dave Revson and Andy Katz. We are into bubble games now, Andy, and we had a big bubble game last night.
Yeah, there's no question that Wisconsin and Penn State, both of them desperately needed this. I would also argue that Michigan desperately needed their game against Nebraska. So 3 of the 4 teams had to come out of there with some momentum. Only 2 did.
Yeah, right. By rule.
Yes, but
the
way it ended for one of them, I think, was pretty disheartening.
Absolutely. Let's dive into it. Start with our big story. It's the Badgers and the Nittany Lions in Wisconsin pulling it out in overtime. Connor Essegian was great again. Freshman at 18. He drained 4 threes. Chucky Hepburn came up big when they needed him to. Hit some clutch shots down the stretch as the Badgers won for just the 3rd time in their last 10 games. This is a quad 1 victory. They take it 79-74 in overtime. So let's start there. Let's start with Wisconsin. They have been in a tailspin, obviously, here. Andy, this was a really significant win for them. They now have 5 quad 1 wins on the year. There's a lot of stuff about their resume that isn't great. I mean, the net ranking isn't all that good. But, man, they have some quality wins. And there's only 2 teams in the Big Ten with more quad 1 wins than Wisconsin.
Yeah, let's deal with this going forward right now. Because if they can bottle this performance, that's this morning, Tyler Wall was not 100%. And it was as much mentally as physically because of his ankle injury. He obviously played much better. He played 42 minutes, scored 16 points. Chucky Hepburn, during that streak where they were not playing well, that was the anniversary of his friend's passing a year ago. That affected him. He, last night, was a big-time player who took control, made big-time shots. If he can do that. Connor Essegian, the freshman, he kind of played a little like Fletcher Lawyer. Wasn't shy of the moment. Hit big shots. They kept Penn State in that game and didn't. I thought they defended Seth Lundy pretty well when he tied the game there.
Oh, that was a huge shot by Lundy. I would agree with you. I think it was well defended.
Yeah, so it was well defended. But, this is the kind of performance. To score 79 points, you've seen them up close where they've really struggled to get to 60.
We both have. Yes.
And then to their resume. I think you have to put in perspective. And first of all, the USC win is going to become better, I think. If USC beats Oregon tonight, it becomes a quad 1 win. And I think USC is trending in the right direction. That happened in Atlantis. The way they lost the Kansas game on the fluke Bobby Pettiford flip shot, I don't know if I'm saying that's going to get you in, but put that in perspective. The win over Marquette now looks even better.
At Marquette, too.
What?
At Marquette.
At Marquette.
Yep.
Over Maryland. This win last night obviously was significant. So they are trending with that 5 quad 1 wins, could be 6. I think they're trending in the right direction if they can do what they did last night.
Right, and that becomes the huge issue. They head to Nebraska coming up next and then host Michigan next week. I agree with you on Tyler Wall. The thing that really stood out to me was the 8 assists. He's a player who can facilitate so well when he is at 100%. And the points were great, and they needed every single one of them, as it turned out. But it just felt like he was more of the player that we saw a year ago, 2 years ago. He came up with a huge block on the defensive end, just looked like, to your point, a guy who wasn't hurt and in recent weeks has still not looked like himself prior to last night.
Look, I think everyone heals differently. I've been doing this long enough that it's just when someone is cleared to play, that doesn't mean they're ready to play.
Yeah.
I don't care what sport it is. And so there was that mental aspect that he was going through because he didn't have the same lift. And then are you thinking, I don't want to turn it again? How much pressure can I put on the foot? Back to this, what they have next. Think about Ohio State lost to Nebraska. They've obviously gone the wrong direction. Penn State, just when they needed that win, lost to Nebraska.
Yeah.
Michigan, which we'll talk about momentarily, but they could have done the same thing. No, they took care of business. Wisconsin, State and Penn State, by the way, they're rested today. They're flying directly to Lincoln, not going back to Madison. So they're taking this very seriously, this road trip of making sure they take care of business.
Let's talk about Penn State. This is a damaging loss for them. As of right now, it's a quad 3 loss. I think it'll end up being a quad 2. But the point is, these are games you got to win at home. They had only lost once at the Bryce Jordan Center this year to Michigan State. This is the second one. They, of course, lost that game at the Palestra as well to Purdue. Damaging, no doubt, for Penn State, just in that you need to accumulate wins. They're in the spot right now where they need as many wins as they can get, and this is a tough one to see slip away, particularly given how clutch that Lundy shot was. I mean, that was a fabulous shot in a well-guarded situation.
Yeah, I mean, this game at Wisconsin, which I think was 63-60.
Yes.
Go back to the Virginia Tech game, Clemson in double overtime. I would even say, as difficult it is for them to defend Zach Edey, everything was pointing in their direction in that game at the Palestra.
Yeah, 6-point lead at the half.
Okay.
Yep.
So they couldn't close it, and they got steamrolled in the second half. Great atmosphere. You've been there. Great intimate setting. They have missed so many opportunities with this veteran roster that at this point, I don't care what the brackets say, I don't see how they're in right now. I think they've flipped the script now with the Badgers. And I think Michigan's got the momentum on them. I actually would, if I were to rank them right now in terms of who I have the most confidence in, I would put Michigan and Wisconsin ahead of Penn State.
Interesting. Penn State goes to Maryland next, so that will not be easy.
No.
That's a game that's on the Big Ten Network coming up this weekend, and then they host Illinois. So look, they have a lot of work to do. They were in the first four out. Mike DeCourcy said, to your point, they were actually ahead of Wisconsin heading into last night, according to Mike. But Michigan, they were in 0 of the 105 brackets in the bracket matrix as of yesterday morning. So this is a team that still has a ton of work to do. They have the one very damaging non-conference loss to Central Michigan, but they are starting to round into form here, Andy. 3 straight wins, hadn't won 3 in a row since the first 3 games of the year, and really took care of business. They left very little doubt in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. Iowa's lost to Eastern Illinois. Now, they didn't have Murray or the older McCaffrey, but they've erased it by what they've done.
Right.
I really believe that Michigan can do that with Central Michigan if they continue to win, so that we would stop talking about it. It's the same thing that happened last year with the Rutgers loss to Lafayette. They erased it by what they did late in the season. The game Saturday night is a monster game for Michigan against Indiana. I mean, if they can win that game, that completely flips the narrative on the Wolverines. They're playing well, they're scoring well, they're getting great support, obviously, around Hunter Dickinson. He's proven that he can't be as dominant a player to carry a team like TJD, like Zach Edey. That's okay. That's just maybe not who he is. He can get you 19-8, but it's not going to be the deciding factor of how you win the way TJD and Zach Edey have been able to do this season. He needs the other guys. And the last 3 games, whether it's Bufkin, McDaniel, Jet Howard, you name it, different players, Joey Baker.
Joey Baker, a nice game last night, double figure.
They've all stepped up to where, it's been a collective effort for the Wolverines.
There's 6 players in double figures, to your point, and we have seen this team. I mean, when they get going offensively, they're pretty good. They scored 93 points. As you know, last night hit 14 threes, which tied a season high. They do have a number of different players who can beat you. It just felt like we hadn't seen that on one night where it really felt like the whole group was connected and everyone was playing well. Doug McDaniel had a really nice game last night, scoring the ball and dishing it as well. So really everyone played well, and we haven't seen many games like that.
What I thought we saw last night, and then you and I both were at the Northwestern Michigan game, the second half, Michigan has a second gear where they can get going. They did it to Northwestern. I thought they did it to Nebraska, where suddenly, bam, Joey Baker, whether it's Jet Howard, they can take that game from 3 to 6 to 9, just like that.
Right.
And that bodes well for Michigan, I think, trending in the right direction. And the last thing I'll just say, and this is the truth on the networks, okay? Not us, because we don't usually get them late, but CBS, ESPN, Fox. This is true. It happens with Michigan. It happens with Duke in the ACC. They backload their schedule because post-Super Bowl, there are ratings. They want them to play. It is a fact that Michigan always plays the better brand name teams later in the season, which is sometimes tough for them. In this instance, they need it.
Yeah, they need it.
The Minnesota games were early. The Northwestern games were early. They're not having those games late because they want them on television on the weekend for CBS, ESPN, and Fox, and that's good for Michigan.
These are opportunities for them to get quality wins, and kind of to your point, you look at the next couple weekends, right? They've got Indiana this weekend. They have Michigan State, a game that is on Fox, coming up next weekend. So we shall see. They have a lot of work to do, but trending in the right direction for sure. That first matchup, tonight's game between Iowa and Indiana, is the first top 5 matchup in Big Ten women's basketball since 1993. There were actually 3 that season. All of them involved the Hawkeyes. Most notable one saw number 3 Ohio State, led by Katie Smith, beating number 4 Iowa in the Final Four. Ohio State went on to lose in the championship game to Cheryl Swoops and Texas Tech. So that is the backdrop for this one. And speaking of backdrops, we are joined now by Megan McEwen, and her backdrop is the practice gym at Northwestern because she is going to be calling Game 2 tonight between the Terps and the Wildcats. I do want to focus in, though, on this matchup between Iowa and Indiana. Obviously, it's enormous, Megan. But I'll ask you this in context of the Maryland team that you're going to see and Ohio State and Michigan and all these great teams in the Big Ten. We've got 5 of the top 13 teams. Are these the 2 best playing tonight, in your opinion, Iowa and Indiana?
Yes, Iowa and Indiana are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. I'd even go out on a limb and say Indiana is the best team in the Big Ten because of how disciplined they are on both sides of the ball. It truly is remarkable what they did against Ohio State a couple of weeks ago at home. Granted, Ohio State had just lost its first game to Iowa, but Indiana's ability to make halftime adjustments and to really focus in on the scouting report, knowing personnel and taking away strengths of opponents is what makes them so good. Iowa, on the other hand, they can flat out score the ball, leading the Big Ten in points per game, more than 80. It's truly remarkable the pace at which Iowa plays, but Indiana, if there's one team that's going to slow them down, it's the Hoosiers.
Yeah, that's what I want to get into. I mean, this is strength versus strength here because Indiana is so good, as we know, defensively. Iowa is the top scoring team, not just in the Big Ten, but the top scoring team in the nation this year. Indiana is the best scoring defense in the Big Ten, and they perennially have been that with Terry Morin, who's a fabulous defensive coach. What do you think about the strength versus strength component of this matchup?
It's 2 Ps, point guards and post players. If you like both of those positions, then this game is for you. Starting at the point guard position, Iowa's Caitlin Clark, who, if you don't know that name by now, you must be living under a rock because she's been phenomenal. 9 triple-doubles in her career thus far. She just tied the NCAA record for all-time career triple-doubles. And then on the other side, Grace Berger for Indiana, who is just so poised. She's very quiet in her approach, but yet she does all the little things that a team needs to win in that point guard position. And then the post players, you're looking at the top 2 leaders in field goal percentage in the Big Ten, and Indiana's Mackenzie Holmes and Iowa's Monica Sinano. But 2 different styles, if you will. Mackenzie Holmes is more likely to use a dribble when she gets the ball in deep position to try to get even better positioning for her to go up and make a move. Whereas Monica Sinano for Iowa is less likely to dribble. She just gets really deep position, steals with her hips, and she's able to finish at a very high rate.
You mentioned Caitlin Clark, and yeah, you really would have to be under a rock not to have seen Caitlin Clark play this year. Certainly, I mean, in the way that people consume sports in this day and age, right? Even if you're not sitting down and watching a game from start to finish, the highlights are just so amazing that if you're a sports fan, you can't help but to have seen her. There are some really good players in the country. She is one of them. She is phenomenal. There are probably a couple others she's competing with for National Player of the Year. How important could a game like this be, a real spotlight game for her National Player of the Year hopes?
This is a massive game for Caitlin Clark in terms of National Player of the Year contention. And this is actually a big week because her other 2 players she's competing with are going to be South Carolina's Leah Boston and LSU's Angel Reese. And LSU and South Carolina are playing this weekend on Super Bowl Sunday. But Iowa and Caitlin Clark, what's been so impressive about Clark's run, especially this year, is how consistent she's been since the moment she really started. This year alone, Clark is averaging 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists in Big Ten play. That's practically a triple-double. But her ability to facilitate at the rate that she is right now is what makes her so dangerous. She sees the game from just a different level. Stephanie White, one of our analysts, has called her a unicorn. And that's the best way to describe her, simply from her mix of facilitating, her ability to rebound and start the break, and then just her flat out ability to score at three levels, whether that be at the basket in the mid-range or from way downtown, those logo threes she's become known for.
It's interesting because it is a strength versus strength, and Caitlin Clark is phenomenal, and Monica Czinano, and we've talked about how good this Iowa team is going up against Indiana's defense. But Indiana is so much better offensively than they were a year ago, Megan. I mean, their scoring's up about 10 points per game. So I think you used to kind of think about Indiana, particularly when they got into these really big games, about wanting to keep the score down. But they can keep up. I mean, they can easily score in the 80s. They're averaging up there. So let me ask you this. How well positioned is Iowa to slow down Indiana? Because if there's a weakness of Iowa's team, it's on that end of the court.
The greatest strength that Indiana has this year is depth. And it's really something we've seen for the first time in a long time for the Hoosiers. You add in the transfer of Sydney Parrish from Oregon, who is so competitive, does so many little things, but she has the ability to knock it down from three, as does Chloe Moore McNeil for Indiana, as does Yarden Garzone, the freshman from Israel, who's come in and made an immediate impact in her first year. And because Mackenzie Holmes is so dominant in the paint, it just opens things up on the three-point line. So right now, Indiana has multiple shooting and scoring threats. And that's just the starting five. You also have Sarah Scalia coming off the bench, who shoots 40%. So many offensive weapons. Iowa is going to have to defend without fouling, especially down low in the paint. Monica Czinano cannot afford to get into foul trouble because Holmes is so dominant, and she's elite at drawing fouls. Because if Czinano is on the bench, then Iowa's going to have a really tough time defending Indiana down the stretch.
Indiana's 13-0 at home. Iowa's actually last team to beat them there. The Hoosiers are drawing great. They have really had fabulous atmospheres. How important do you think home court is?
It's huge, and it's so fun that we can now talk about home court advantage. And it's huge because when you come in, you want to have that mindset as a home team that you're already up 10-0 because of your crowd. And that's exactly what Assembly Hall has been for the women's team this year, and really the last couple of years. It's been a fantastic atmosphere and crowd. But one thing's for sure, not only are these fans coming to see Indiana in this top 5 matchup, but to see a player like Caitlin Clark, who is a generational talent, and she's truly someone who draws so many eyes to the game. I just called the Iowa-Penn State game in College Park, or out in Happy Valley earlier this week, and there was a fan that drove in from New Hampshire to State College to see Caitlin Clark play. So she is drawing so many different eyes. There are tons of people that are aware of what she's doing, and she has been able to, I really think, help spur this packing of fans into these stadiums as of late.
No doubt. And it's amazing the way she handles it, too, because she really does handle it with great grace and gives fans the time that they want from her. And that has to be challenging to do when so many people want to talk to you, and she really handles it great. And again, these two are going to play again in Iowa City here at the end of the year. Let me leave you with this. Is there one matchup that you think ultimately
playing the post between Holmes and Czinano? Caitlin Clark's going to do her thing and score in double figures and whatnot, but who can defend without fouling in the post, and who can consistently slow the other team down? That's going to be the biggest factor in this. Can Indiana successfully slow Iowa down, and can Iowa defend without fouling? Because that's going to be huge down the stretch when you have two dominant post players like Iowa's Monica Czinano and IU's Mackenzie Holmes.
They played 3 times last year. Iowa got the sweep. Indiana won both games the season before. Again, Iowa, the last team to win in Bloomington. Should be phenomenal tonight. We're looking forward to Game 2 as well. Maryland and Northwestern will hear you on the call of that one. But, Megan, really appreciate your time on an enormous day for the Big Ten, taking a few minutes to give us some insight here.
Happy to do it, Dave. Thanks so much.
As you may have heard, Super Bowl Sunday is 3 days away. As always, the game is chock full of Big Ten players. There are 16 in all, so we highlighted 4 from each team here. The Chiefs with George Karlaftis, Isaiah Pacheco, among others. Miles Sanders, Brandon Graham, among the highest profile members of the Eagles. Dave Wanstedt is here. As promised, we are delighted to have you here. Normally, this is a treat reserved for football season, so fabulous to have you. Obviously, a Super Bowl champion defensive coordinator, with the Cowboys. So I want to start with this. I think one thing that has always struck me is you don't realize until you cover it or participate in it as a player and a coach what a sport of routine football is, right? I mean, everything, like this is what you do on Monday, this is what you do on Tuesday. Everything is choreographed down to the minute. The Super Bowl is different. So give people a sense of how disruptive the Super Bowl and everything that goes along with it is to the routine of a team.
Yeah, and you hit it. I mean, that's, you know, means a great word. Distractions. How do you eliminate distractions and still get the work done that you need to get done to prepare for the biggest game of the year?
Right.
100+ million they're expecting to watch this game this week. And, you know, it's the first thing we did, as crazy as this sounds, the first day, you know what you do? You call a meeting, you get the team in there, you tell them there's no good football. We want to know how many tickets you need. We want to know how many family members you come. We take care of hotels. We take care of tickets. Any issues that are going to be non-football, today is the day. And we would have people there from the ticket office, from the NFL office, people that were going to be organizing the hotels, things for the family, and knock that out. Right. Because it's a nightmare if you get down to the site. Now it's time for football. And the biggest thing I think that we did in talking to teams this year that they're trying to do, anything new that you're going to put in Rever. Now they've studied these teams for an entire year. And it's overload on information. You know, like anything else, at this point, you almost have too much information. But you look close at it and you say, what basketball, football, whatever, put something in specifically to give us the best chance to win against this team. Okay, so you want to do that early. Do it as quick as you can and make decisions. Is this going to be in the game plan or is it out? You don't want to go to the site and now all of a sudden, guys, we want to put this blitz in when they're out there and everything going on. So you put in the new stuff, you clear up any family members, and then you try to get a couple physical days of practice. And it's changed somewhat, but we were a very physical team, so we were not going to change with the players and back off too early because that would be something unusual. That would be, you know, somewhat of a distraction in their minds. So now we would get that done and then head out to the site. And then once you get to the site, you can imagine the people that are around the hotel. And you try to avoid them. You know, it's like we do the back doors and the service elevators. You know, you've done that wherever you still.
That's the story of my life. Yeah,
you still get that treatment.
Dodging the paparazzi, sure. Yeah.
So, but it's still, you can't help it. And you see their kids running around and it can drive a coach crazy. You know, in my particular situation, think of this. Double down on this. I accepted the Bears job the week before the Super Bowl. So I was technically the head coach of the Bears and the assistant head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So, you know, now we come off the field and they have these media things you got to go to. The NFL has a list. And so when you talk about see the players up there doing interviews, they have to talk for X amount of time. Every day they got it organized. This is not something that they feel like doing or they don't feel like doing, okay?
Right.
And the same thing with coaches. Well, I was trying to work the Chicago media and get to know these guys in addition. So there's just a lot of those things going on. And then I remember this story. John Madden was doing our game, him and Pat Summerall. And they came out to our practice Wednesday. And we were always practicing Wednesday. You mentioned routine. Jimmy said, we cannot change a thing. So we went out there and we had to practice for Wednesday like we did for the opening game against whoever.
Right.
Okay? And that was full speed. And at that time, we had some guys banged up. So John Madden had just come, we were playing the Buffalo Bills. And he had just come from the Bills practice. So he's standing there watching. He's standing behind Jimmy and I. And we run a play for our defense. And it was a little toss play. And Emmitt Smith was trying to help out and be the scout team running back. And we toss Emmitt the ball, and he takes about 3 steps. And our linebacker, Kenny Norton from UCLA, he comes up and he hits him. And Emmitt goes down. His helmet comes off.
Oh, my goodness.
And John Madden.
What are you doing?
John Madden turns to Jimmy and says, I know who's going to win this game. He said, I just came from the other practice. They're not doing this. And we talked about it, and the players laughed about it. And Jimmy says, guys, I'm just afraid to do something different and get you guys out of what you've been doing for 24 weeks or whatever it is at that time.
Yeah.
So, and then you mentioned the routine. How about this one? So I had my routine. I would be on the field. I was in the press box. I'd go up there and stick up all my notes and stuff that I wanted, have my computer thing, everything that I was going to do. And sure enough, when I left the field and got up there, I sat down, maybe have a water, and bang, the ball was kicked, and here we go.
Yeah.
No one told me that the pregame was 5 minutes early. So I'm up there, and now I'm sitting, and I'm the only one in the press box. And I said, they said, no, Coach, you got 5 more minutes. I says, 5 minutes? What am I going to do for what they're going to have for lunch? I'm just walking the press box. Anyway, but, you know, it's a big game, and I know the players. We talk Big Ten players.
Yeah.
This is exciting, and they are going to have an intricate part in this game.
All right, let's go through each team, maybe a couple guys from each side. Let's start with Kansas City.
Well, Kansas City, you know, I tell you what, one thing, people don't like what Greg Schiano's doing at Rutgers. He is getting tough guys, and they are running the ball. I mean, Kansas City, in my opinion, to win this game, they got to be balanced. They can't come out, and everyone's expecting Patrick Mahomes to throw it 60 times. That ain't going to happen. For Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, they've got to run the ball. And who's it going to be? Who's the fullback? Mike Burton from Rutgers. Who's the tailback? Pacheco's going to be. I wouldn't want to tackle Pacheco. He's one of the hardest running backs I've ever seen. I mean, so those guys are going to be a key to the offense, in my opinion. It's not going to be Patrick Mahomes and all the razzle-dazzle.
Right.
I think it's going to be those running backs and Big Ten guys. And then on defense, if you want to stop, I got to slow down. If you want to stop Jalen Hurts and this quarterback read offense, nobody does it better. Okay, the whole key is the linebackers are going to stay home, but it's on the defensive ends. Those are the guys that got to be disciplined. The defensive ends. Those are the guys that can't halfway take a play off and get mentally bored, and now bam, there goes Jalen Hurts around the end for a big play. And who were the two defensive ends? Mike Dana and Frank Clark, okay? And Karlaftis, he's going to play a lot too. But these are the two starting guys, and they'll rotate those defensive linemen. They're all Big Ten guys, so they're going to have to be smart, disciplined, and physical, play defense.
Checo's an amazing story, right? I mean, here's a guy who's run for more yards as a rookie than he ran for in any year at Rutgers. And then on the other side, you got a great running back, too, in Miles Sanders. So let's talk about Philly. Impact players has to start with him.
I love Philly. I mean, this is old school football versus razzle-dazzle modern football. And by that, I mean Philly, there's a reason they're 1 or 2 statistically running the football in the National Football League. And it starts with the running game. You talked about Miles Sanders is going to be key. If they cannot get into a shootout with Kansas City, that's not their DNA. That's not their style, David. So they're going to have to run the ball. And Miles Sanders is going to be huge in this thing. And and obviously Kansas City, Joshua Scott, a corner, from Michigan State, he's going to be a big part of this passing game, trying to slow down Patrick Mahomes, not giving up the big plays. The key guy, this is the matchup. TJ Edwards, right? The linebacker.
Amazing story. Undrafted.
Amazing story,
right.
But I'll tell you what's going to happen in this game. In anybody that follows professional football, you say, who's the best tight end in football? Travis Kelce. Fine. Who is Patrick Mahomes' favorite receiver? Travis Kelce. When they have to have it, who's his guy? And who's going to be matched up on him a lot? Our man Edwards. So he's got a huge guy. He might have the biggest job, even more so than the quarterbacks, that he's going to have to play at a high level for them to be successful.
And he has done that all year. 159 tackles. That's a staggering number in the top 8 in the NFL. Let's switch gears. I don't want to talk about the Senior Bowl with you as well. It actually happened this past week in Mobile. It's so important, obviously, for Big Ten players and for college players in general. Just a sampling here of who went. 26 players in all. You can see Evan Hull, Chase Brown among the running backs. Charlie Jones, fresh off the amazing year at Purdue. Riley Moss, Devin Witherspoon, last 2 Big Ten defensive backs of the year. I want to speak kind of big picture first about the Senior Bowl because you were involved in this. You were actually the head coach of the Senior Bowl one year. I think people know enough at this point to know it's really less coaching in it, how you can position players to impress NFL scouts.
Well, you know, this is the first year that they changed the format of the coaching. You know, when we coached it, I had my full staff down there. And what are the advantages of that? Well, you're eating with the players. You're meeting with them. You find out how these players in a meeting, are they coachable? Can they take criticism? So you're getting a lot more if you coach a game. Now what they do, like Luke Getsy of the Bears was the head coach, but then the offensive coordinator was from Atlanta. The defensive coordinator might have been from Buffalo. So they get everybody involved to make it, you know, a little bit fairer that way. But I'll tell you what, I drafted Bobby Ingram for one reason. Bobby had a great career with me. We all know him from coaching now at Wisconsin last year, Penn Stater. Bobby Ingram, people said he wasn't big enough, he wasn't fast enough. I get onto the Senior Bowl, and I'm watching Bobby going against the best corners in the country. And Bobby's not big enough, and he's not fast enough. But guess what? Bobby's open every play. And he's catching the football. And you see him catching punts. And so that was the reason. The Senior Bowl was the reason that I drafted him. And everybody's got something different to prove. You mentioned Evan Hall from Northwestern. They didn't have a very good team. And, you know, running backs get a chance to put games away when your team's winning. Northwestern's defense, they were behind, so they were throwing it. So this was a great opportunity for him to really showcase, and he was the talk of the Senior Bowl, one of the guys. You know, how about Chase Brown, the running back from Illinois? Everybody knows he's a great player, but he wanted to go, now I want to go one-on-one against those guys from Alabama. I want to prove to everybody, which he did. He had a great game right there. Jones, the receiver, right? Charlie Jones from Purdue. You know what the NFL people are saying? Is he a one-year wonder? Because we know what happened in Iowa. Now he comes to Purdue and he puts up fabulous numbers. He went down there and he competed and did a fantastic job. You know, so every player in their own, I used to say when they would come in, I coach it, you're on a business trip, son. This is not a fun bowl game, okay?
Right.
And you mentioned plays, and I'll finish with this, Dave. You know, no one wants to see, every coach and GM, they're all down there. They want to see you one-on-one competition against him. They don't care what plays you want. They want to see how Bobby Ingram. Can Bobby Ingram, is he good enough to get open against the top corner from Georgia? You know, so they want to see the athletic ability and the competitiveness from an plays. The plays in the game is kind of insignificant to the drills during the week in practice.
Right. I mean, the mantra has always kind of been you get drafted off of what you do during the week, and the game is kind of window dressing. You could maybe help yourself there, but again, all of process and followed so closely as everything surrounding the NFL draft is. This was great, my friend.
Definitely.
Really, really good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Story time with Wani is always fun and good to see you in the midst of our Chicago winter. Coming up next here, we'll have Andy Reid join us. Going to look ahead to tonight in the Big Ten. Two very compelling games, Boilers and Hawks, Katz and Bucks. Our keys straight ahead.
So sweet, so crispy. Nobody makes breakfast as good as Wendy's new home-style French toast sticks.
Nobody.
Nope.
Keep talking. I can't hear you.
I should probably stop.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's home-style French toast sticks. Are you one of the millions surprised by Verizon and AT&T raising your rates last year? T-Mobile has Price Lock Guarantee, and that means they won't raise the rates of your talk, text, and data ever. Join T-Mobile and experience Price Lock Guarantee. A guarantee you won't look back. That's a guarantee.
If you're looking for the biggest Big Ten experience, then welcome home. The Big Ten Plus app, powered by Big Ten Network. Personalized with your pass so you get your favorite Big Ten sports and schools streaming and on demand. We're the home of compelling stories, the iconic games, hundreds of exclusive events you can't find anywhere else. Because when it comes to the Big Ten sports you love, there's no plus like home. Only on the Big Ten Plus app, powered by Big Ten Network. Download and
You love closing a deal, but hate managing your business from afar. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed Instant Match instantly delivers quality candidates matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Workers' comp can crush a small business. Every year it would jump 5, 10, 15, 20%, even though there was never any claims. And that's where I was struggling as a growing business. I'm very happy that I moved over to Pi for my workers' comp. From start to finish, it was extremely easy. They quickly came back to me with a plan that was affordable for me so that I can grow my company while not breaking the bank.
Ask your agent or get a quote at easyaspie.com.
Largest assortment of officially licensed Big Ten fan gear anywhere. Shop now and get today's special offer. Fanatics.com. Officially licensed everything.
Did you know that everywhere are recommending GoodRx?
My doctor told me about GoodRx to help us save money on our meds.
And my daughter told me about it. I take a lot of prescriptions. GoodRx helps me keep up.
My neighbor showed me the app. It helped me save on my kids' allergy pills.
Americans everywhere are sharing the savings.
Dropping off a prescription.
Great.
Another good reason to check GoodRx.
Crystal Langhorne is one of the most decorated athletes in University of Maryland history. The first Terp, man or woman, to score 2,000 points and grab 1,000 rebounds was a three-time USBWA All-American. An integral member of the 2006 National Championship winning team, she ended up being the first active player to have her jersey retired to the rafters for the Terps.
The Washington Mystics select Crystal Langhorne from the University of Maryland.
Playing 11 WNBA seasons, including a 2018 championship with the Seattle Storm, Crystal has undeniably been a winner throughout her basketball career and beyond. She is now the Director of Community Engagement for Force for Change, a social justice platform for the Seattle Storm. Her work on and off the court makes Crystal Langhorne a big impact pioneer, class of 2023.
Go back to hoops for the duration of the show. We got a couple big men's hoops games tonight. Number one, Purdue looking to bounce back from the loss to Indiana. They will host red-hot Iowa. And then over on FS1, it is Ohio State trying to break out of its funk, hosting tourney-hopeful Northwestern. Andy back with me. Let's dive into Iowa and Purdue first. These are the two most efficient offenses in the country now. Purdue is number one in efficiency. Iowa is number two. What stands out to you about this matchup?
Well, first thing, I mean, Iowa outside of their game at Rose. I wouldn't say they're two completely different teams, but they've had a very favorable home schedule. 6 of their last 9 have been at home. They score incredibly well, especially at Carver Hawkeye. And now it gets more difficult. Obviously, starting off with this road game at Purdue, and they're going to have to try to score in this. I think at least in the 80s to try to win this game. Because that's been sort of their recipe. Get it into the mid 70s, definitely in the 80s, right, and they're going to win.
1-4 on the road in the Big Ten. To your point, now the one is really impressive, right?
Yes.
I mean, to go into Rutgers and win. What about from Purdue's point of view, trying to bounce back here from the loss to Indiana? What do you see in this matchup from the Boilers' point of view, perhaps that they can take advantage?
I don't know if it's bounced back because bounced back in the second half. I mean, I think that's where they bounced back.
Yeah.
They played really well in the second half. They were right there, a couple of miscues, or they would have stolen that game on Saturday.
Yeah.
You could argue that in the second 20 minutes, they might have been the better team. Overall, they're the better team, but within the context of that game, they certainly weren't in the first 20. So I think they've already got that out of their way. I think they already know what they did wrong down the stretch. They were right there to potentially win it. This is the these teams don't have a true post. So Zach Edey certainly can exploit it, but they got to get them moving. I mean, that's the beauty of Iowa is they get it, they rip and run. And if they can get Edey moving a little bit more, then obviously, that's to their advantage.
Only home game in a 4-game stretch here for the Boilers. They go on the road to Northwestern this weekend. You and I will be at that one here on Big Ten Network. And speaking of Northwestern, they head to Ohio State tonight. You got a Buckeyes team that has not been playing well. I mean, let's just call it as it is. They're under 500 now. And yet the net ranking is still really high. I think there's still a feeling that this is a good team. They've just lost all these games. It's crazy to think the 9 losses, Andy, only one of them has been by double digits. They're losing so many close games. So what do you see here with Northwestern going into Columbus, a place where they have an abysmal history?
Well, first of all, the last time Ohio State played well, it feels like it was that game at Northwestern. They actually dominated that game against the Wildcats, and so they match up well against them, but they're completely in different directions at this point. It's crazy to think that Northwestern, if they win tonight, they'll be 8-5. They'll jump into at least a 4-way tie for second. If Iowa were to upset Purdue, it would be a 5-way tie for second at 8-5. And Northwestern, peeling back the resume in comparison to Michigan, would have better wins than Michigan, even though they got swept by Michigan overall within that 8. The momentum is with Northwestern. I think we saw what they did against Wisconsin, that they can translate that onto the road if they defend well. I thought that was a tremendous bounce back because we saw what they did against Michigan in that second half. We would assume that they were a little fatigued. That was the end of that long stretch of games or toward the end of it. And the way they bounced back against the Badgers, I thought that was significant and tells everyone that this team is not a fluke. They are here to stay. This is a winnable game for them. They don't have a lot of them, but you can look and say, okay, this is the kind of game, if we're going to stay on that trajectory to get in the tournament, this is the one we get. It just feels like Ohio State, they haven't lost the locker room from what we can tell from the outside, but clearly things are trending in the completely wrong direction.
Again, Columbus just been a house of horrors for Northwestern. They have one win in that building all time. It is interesting to look at Northwestern's resume, and I think the most compelling thing about it is how good they've been on the road. They have 5 road wins this year. There are only 3 power conference teams in the country that have more road wins than Northwestern. One of them was Georgetown, and so I'm not sure you necessarily hang your hat on that. It does count. But then they have some really good. They're the only team to win in Indiana. They're one of 2 teams to win at Michigan State, with Purdue being the other one. So, again, their schedule is brutal down the stretch. We've said it every single time we've talked about them. But kind of to your point, if you're going to differentiate your resume, what's different about this team than the other bubble teams, this is a huge opportunity.
Well, and let's be frank here. Ohio State's home crowd is not great. And it can be good when they're really good, when they have a great opponent. I'll be honest, I'll be surprised if they have a great crowd tonight and a very active crowd tonight. And I think that bodes well for Northwestern. I don't think you say House of Horrors statistically in terms of win-loss record. This is not a House of Horrors and you're going, oh, we're intimidated, we're going into this arena.
I hear you. I'm just telling you that.
No, I know. I'm saying this is a good time to go into Ohio State. I do not anticipate this being a rockin' place tonight.
Right. So your point is the record could have something to do with the fact that Ohio State's had much better teams.
Yes.
Through the years. Yes. That being said, Ohio State's still 8-3 at home. I mean, I know they've had, this is not a vintage Buckeyes team, but they've been pretty good there in Columbus. So we will see tonight, again, 2 really compelling games in the Big Ten. Let's give you the hoop standings up to the minute. Purdue's still up 3 games on Indiana, Rutgers, and Michigan. So you have a 3-way tie for second, and then a 3-way tie for 5th behind them with Iowa, Northwestern, Illinois. Michigan State and Maryland also with 7 wins. They have played 1 more game than those other 3. 9 of the 14 teams still 500 or better in conference play. We promised stock tips when we went to break, but it's really just more Big Ten basketball. But we're doing it in terms of who you're buying stock in.
Yes.
So where are you starting? Who is Andy Katz recommending that America buy stock in as a basketball team?
Okay, so I understand in Big Ten teams to get to Houston. We've been burned. We've had plenty of teams that have gotten there and a few that have played for the national championship since 2000. And had chances.
7.
Yes. And they've had multiple chances. 13, 15, 05. So there certainly have been opportunities. But I'm buying stock in Purdue. I know that says, oh, well, they're the number 1 team in the country. But I really believe in this team. Zach Edey has not dipped at all. Okay? He has remained consistently good, even at another level. No one in the country is like him. And he's become a better passer. I think the timing of Fletcher Lawyer as a timely shooter, the fact that Mason Gillis sometimes can go off. I like this team. By the way, they're going to be in Columbus in the first weekend, which is advantageous. And then they're going to be in Louisville. Where I was there, they should have beaten Virginia, but that is going to be an unbelievable home court for them.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay? I think the path is there for them. Number 2, Indiana. I was high on Indiana way back at the beginning of the season, had them in my top 10. You and I were there the other night. I am all in again. TJD is playing like a team playing like a player, like a Danny Manning. Okay, go back to Danny Manning in '88, who carried Kansas to the national championship.
Danny and the Miracles.
Yes.
Yes.
He's playing like that. Get on my shoulders. And he is driven. I totally will buy into him. Jalen Hood-Schifino is a pro. They're going to get Xavier Johnson back at some point. So I'm in on Indiana. I think they're going to get on that 4 line. So they're going to have an advantageous situation to potentially get to the Sweet 16. The third team, I'm all over the place. Even though they lost last night, I'm with Maryland. I really like the way they overall are defended.
2 nights ago, yeah. Lost 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago, thank you. Sorry, it's all blur.
No, I know, it's all blur for me too. But
lost to Michigan State. But Jameer Young, I think, can be that guy.
Right.
Lead guard who can carry you a round or two. Because I was trying to find a third team, and now I'm back in on Maryland.
Okay, so you're in on them because of Jameer. Different team away from home. Now, whether or not have they evolved now to the point where they are good enough away from home to win games?
It's neutral, though.
Right.
It's
I
neutral.
understand.
So,
right.
Look, I want to have a third team.
Yeah.
And I'm having issues with Illinois, Iowa, Northwestern, Michigan State.
Right.
Whether or not I want to be all in.
Okay, so that's who you're buying stock in terms of teams. How about individuals? We have to talk about Zach Edey and Trayce Jackson-Davis. The numbers are just staggering. Edey is 4th in the nation in scoring. He's 2nd in rebounding. Jackson-Davis is the nation's 4th leading rebounder. His assist numbers are just remarkable for a big guy, and he is 3rd in the nation in blocks. In short, they are both really good. Edey is seen as the leading candidate for National Player of the Year. I think it would be surprising were he not to win it at this point. Where does Trayce Jackson-Davis fit in? I
really think he's second. And I really believe, and I can't remember, and someone's going to correct me here, when we've had in the Big Ten 1-2. And I think it's now become a clear 1-2 for National Player of the Year, as well as obviously Big Ten. Look, the other names out there, Brandon Miller from Alabama, Drew Timme from Gonzaga, Azuolas Tubelis from Arizona. These guys, clearly are All-American. Jalen Wilson from Kansas. They've all had All-American seasons. But I just feel like Edey and TJD are a step above. And, I think we're going to see in the voting or whatever for Wooden, Naismith, it's going to be 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, which is really remarkable.
Okay, so sometimes I think my fear sometimes as I try to assess these things is, am I seeing everything through the Big Ten lens? You know how much I love Ken Pom, right? Because everything's quantified. There's no opinion.
They're 1-2 there.
They're 1 and 2 in Ken Pom. And again, Zach Edey is first, Trayce Jackson-Davis is second. It is a mathematical formula that simply spits out players, and it spits out Zach Edey 1, Trayce Jackson-Davis 2. Pretty remarkable. A ton of fun. See you throughout here the rest of the weekend. We enjoy the hoops tonight. See you tomorrow.